I never remember feeling sick. Just a sudden headache and my dog barking as I collapsed to the ground. The world had vanished beneath my feet, and my consciousness was trapped in darkness, disconnected from my body. For what felt like an eternity, I floated through the emptiness of the void, uncaring and at peace. Then I heard a voice. He sounded stressed, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. To my uneducated mind, it sounded Russian, but for all I know, it could have been Polish or Serbian. As I focused in on the strange words, I started to awake. I could feel vibrations all around me, accompanied by the sound of a running engine. It didn't take much more to realize we were in a car driving somewhere. Where am I? I groaned. Two men loomed above me, both wearing surgical masks. Despite their obscured faces, I could tell they were in shock from seeing me awake. Without hesitation, one of the men jammed a syringe into my chest, jolting me back to sleep. Though heavily sedated, I could hear people talking. Eventually, the car stopped, and they brought me inside a cold, dry room. Then, I felt a steel blade cut through my abdomen, digging into my flesh. It was an oddly warm, excruciating sensation. I wanted so desperately to cry out in pain, but I couldn't even move, much less resist the knife. With that, I suddenly awoke. I winced in agony as I tried to get an idea of my surroundings. I was outside, face down in the mud. It had felt like an instant, but hours had gone by since I passed out. Trenton Street, a sign said. I was lying in my own neighborhood. My dog had gone missing, and a day had long since given way to night. Help, I weakly called out. My abdomen ached, leaving me unable to stand up. I pulled open my shirt and noticed a massive surgical scar covering the majority of my belly. Just by pure luck, a neighbor arrived, home from a late shift, and promptly called an ambulance. The doctors were baffled. Though I'd clearly undergone some kind of surgery, none could figure out its purpose. After a thorough examination and a scan, I was met by some nervous-looking physicians. What happened to me? I asked, horrified to know the answer. They explained that chunks of my internal organs had gone missing. The scan had revealed tiny holes throughout my entire abdomen, replaced by early granulation tissue. But despite the bizarre findings, my organ functions remained mostly intact. Against all odds, I was more or less fine. After a few days of tests and observation, I was sent home to rest. The police dropped by a couple of times to ask questions, but I couldn't remember anything substantial. In the end, it felt more like a nightmare than reality. If not for the scar, I wouldn't have believed it. It wasn't until a month later before I suddenly took a turn for the worst. At first, it just tingled. Then, it felt like something was moving inside my stomach. It bulged out, leaving me unable to eat or drink. The doctors called me in. They'd scheduled a checkup that was only 2 days away, but I couldn't wait. I basically crawled over next door and begged my neighbor to drive me to the hospital. As I rang the doorbell, I puked onto his doorstep. The vomit was bright red, with chunks of undigested food I couldn't keep down. But something moved in the mess I created. They looked like large worms wriggling on the ground. With that, he rushed me to the emergency room. On the way, I noticed a bulge appearing on my arm. Just like the worms in my vomit, it wriggled around, digging its way under my skin. Before long, it burst out, falling onto my chest. Several other bulges appeared on my limbs and abdomen. I was delirious from the pain. Rather than being afraid, I just felt guilty about messing up my neighbor's car. We quickly reached the hospital. My neighbor grabbed me and basically carried me in through the front door. One of the worms bit him in the process, causing him to drop me to the floor. Luckily, there were doctors and nurses there, ready to assist. They brought me inside and immediately prepared me for surgery. Unfortunately, it didn't take long before they realized I was a lost cause. Hundreds of worms had made their home inside my body cavities, feasting on my internal organs. It has been 5 hours since I arrived at the hospital. The doctors promised to keep me comfortable while I await my inevitable demise. Before the night ends, I will be dead. Little is known about the worms that are eating my guts, but apparently I'm not the first victim. The first prototype needs to be implanted into someone, but each subsequent generation spread through bites, injecting their larvae into the bloodstream. Because of their slow development, it's hard to diagnose infected individuals until it's too late. Hopefully, they can contain the situation. After all, I haven't been around many people lately, only my neighbor as he drove me to the hospital. They didn't bite him, did they? I'm too tired to remember. It's getting hard to think. I guess this is it for me. If you get bitten, please seek help immediately.